And it says we are live just like that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining us. We're getting ready for number 87. The numbers just keep on coming. Can you believe it? The 87th episode of the Hidden Entrepreneur Show with our guest right there on the screen. It's an amazing guy. We spoke for a little bit. Really, really knowledgeable, cool guy. Todd Palmer. What's going on, Todd?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on today. This, I think, is my very first Facebook Live appearance, so I'm excited to be here.
Is that right?
I think so, yeah. I don't remember. This is all new to me, and I'm embracing technology.
Are you? Wow. I'm going to, hang on, let me. All right. So I know that you do podcasts, you've been on podcasts, but broadcasting live, here we are.
Yeah, it's amazing how the world is changing.
It is changing. I think that I'm like right in the middle of that change. I'm going to be 45 this year. So I grew up without a lot of technology. And then, in my 20s had the technology. Now I have two small children, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. Adorable. Love being a father. Who knew? Part of my story. I just so excited about all of that. But I always imagine like, wow, they're like, and here's your daughter. Congratulations on your birth, and you win a free iPad. It's just
there you go.
It all goes hand in hand. So that's all they know.
I thought the kid came walking out with the iPad. It was kind of a parting gift out of the womb.
No, the doctor gives it to you. He's like, here, put this in front.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Exactly. But it is crazy how technology, and I was talking to my father-in-law yesterday about all this, how like we have an Alexa on the counter, which our kids are like, Alexa, Alexa. So now they're shouting at her, asking her to do things, which is just crazy. And, it's still new technology, and it's just, who knows where it's going to go in 3, 5, 10, 15 years.
Exactly. Well, it's amazing. I was at MIT last week in Boston, and I watched a computer program actually write a story from a one-line sentence to write a 20-page term paper.
I'm sorry, what? What happened?
So the construct was, there's this technology out there now where the AI will continue to think and iterate. And so the question was, you walk into a room, wow. the tube of toothpaste is empty, and you stop talking, and then the program will write the rest of the story for you, including names, including a storyline and a construct. It's just the craziest thing. So the AI is out there that will really start writing some of our art, some of our music. It's amazing how that's going to happen.
How do you feel about technology, friend or foe?
I think it's here to stay. I think with any other friend or foe, we have to make peace with it. And it's just like, I've got with my stuff that I do with extraordinary advisors, I often talk to my clients about the voice in your head, the stinking thinking. Okay. And you can't get rid of it, but you have to make peace with it. And you have to walk alongside of it. Sometimes with technology, you have to do the same thing because it can be overwhelming. It can be too much, especially for, even older millennials, Generation X. But for the next generation following it, it's going to be their norm, and they're going to lead us into the future. So we've got to find a way to make peace with it.
Maybe we'll talk about this when we hit record on the podcast portion of this. But did you say that with the voice in your head, the stinking thinking, as you call it, we aren't going to get rid of it, and it's not to be gotten rid of because it will always exist? It will always exist.
So, when anybody goes into a situation where they're, I've got a client right now. He's like, if I could just wrestle this demon, that negative voice in my head,
right?
And I get it out of my thought process, then everything will be okay. The reality is, and psychoscience behind it is, we have to create an acceptance of it. It's like someone in a 12-step program, they will often talk about, I'm always an addict. I'm always an alcoholic. It goes with them wherever they go. It's how they work with that part of their personality, or how they work that way with whomever they are, and make peace with it, but they're never going to eliminate it.
Wow, that's really a lot there. I'm ready to hit record. There's just so much here.
Sounds good.
Go. Are you ready, Todd?
I am.
And is everybody here ready? I'm glad to see some familiar faces. As always, throughout. You have any thoughts, comments or questions, get them in that chat. I read in real time. It's always good to see. I'm going to hit record and get this started. Thank you for joining us. Here we go. Hey there, guys. Thank you for joining us. You're tuned right into the Hidden Entrepreneur Show. I am your host, Josh Carey. Our guest today is Todd Palmer, who is the collaborative business advisor and CEO of Extraordinary Advisors. Simply put, he helps business leaders get stuff done. As the CEO of a six-time Inc. 5000 company, Todd knows that business success begins and ends with people. People make all of the business decisions regarding strategy, execution, cash, and staff. Todd isn't happy until his clients trust themselves as leaders and their decisions. He won't rest until teams trust the leaders and each other. He knows they've nailed it when CEOs and their leadership teams take action towards high-level achievement, resulting in clients that trust the company. Read more sales, more profits, more partnerships. He's also the author of the popular book, The Job Search Process. Find and land a great job in 6 weeks or less. Help me welcome to the show, Todd Palmer. What's going on, Todd?
Josh, thanks so much for having me. I love your enthusiasm for my introduction. I wish I could bring you everywhere I go.
We can talk. It's possible.
Yeah, everybody's got a price.
Right. And you'll create, excuse me, guys, before we start this meeting, Josh, if you could intro me, and then I come in and thank you. Thank you, Todd.
It's like, we were talking about baseball before we got on the broadcast. It's like having, the hitter going up to the on deck circle or to the home plate with their walk-up music. You could just be the voice out there that everybody gets to hear it.
Wonderful. So your title all on your website is Chief Rule Breaker.
Yes.
What exactly is this?
Well, I work a lot with entrepreneurs who are very linear in their thought process. And they think, success is just a straight line from point A to point B. And the reality is I have to break that mindset to recognize that every single failure that they incur, every mistake they make is nothing more than another step on their pathway to success. So I have to shake up that mindset, because oftentimes, even going back to childhood, a lot of us are just taught, life is a win-lose scenario, and there's so much more to it. So when I say chief rule breaker, I'm kind of breaking down that thought process. I break it down in their hiring. They often think, well, I've got to hire people with 5 years of experience, and I can only hire people with this degree or that degree. And when the reality often, for many jobs, not all jobs, but for many jobs, is if you hire the right DNA instead of the right resume, you can make a huge difference in your organization in those areas. So when they want to engage me, I often have to shift their mindset, and that's part of the rule breaking process.
We're going to talk about hiring for the DNA, not the resume, but going down this path of chief rule breaker, I love it because you said that so many people you work with are linear in their thought process. When they hear your approach, is there resistance? Is there more fear that they're like, no, I don't know about this?
Well, the great thing about it is the clients that I do work with have heard me on programs like yours, or they'll see me speak on stage. So really the ones that I've worked with, they've already selected me from the audience. They've already selected me from a podcast, and they want to engage. So it's not that I've got to sell my recipe, because I'm a big believer in speaking from Gestalt, and I'll speak from experience, and I'll share the mistakes that I've made. I'll share the successes we've had. And I'll even share anonymously some of the challenges other clients have faced. So they'll either figure out for themselves pretty quickly, either I'm for them or I'm not for them. Again, it's kind of an acquired taste. It's like falling in love, or beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Either Todd's a fit for you or he's not. And really either one's okay.
I love that you say success begins and ends with people. Is that lost on some?
It's lost on many. So many people, especially entrepreneurs, get wrapped up in getting the right strategy, which is important, which is, how do you execute against that strategy? That's key. Or, that number one question you get is, well, how do I get more funding? I understand all that. How do I get more staff? Well, the reality is the first person involved in that chain of decisions, or those chains of opportunity, is the owner, is the CEO, is the executive leadership team. And those are all people. And the people decide what strategy we're going to go with, what we're not going to go with. That they decide how are we going to execute, how long are we going to stay with the strategy before giving it up because it doesn't work, how are we going to tweak it, how are we going to not be necessarily married to something. So many people think of their expectation. I expect this strategy to work versus the intention. The intention is, you know what, I think my intention is to bring something to marketplace in a certain way. I don't know the exact right way. I'm going to try this way. If that doesn't work, I'm going to try this way. Expectations are wrapped in win, lose, yes, no. Expectations or intentions are much more flexible and can be moved. Then you take it down to the position of cash. Well, a human being decides who gets paid and who doesn't in accounts payable. A human being decides what your terms are going to be. A human being decides the relationship they're going to have with the bank. Magically, they're going to be working with another person, at least in today's world. Maybe in 10 years, it might just be computer to computer. And they decide who's going to be on the team. So ultimately, if you really distill it down to it, it's usually 99 out of 99 times, it's a person making a decision somewhere. That's where I come in.
You've hinted at this and you mentioned it a little bit ago about failing, and you talk extensively on fail forward into success. I love that. Tell me more.
Well, think of, and I actually just gave this speech yesterday, and I had a very mixed dream. I mean, I love talking with entrepreneurs, but I've really discovered that most entrepreneurs are parents, and every entrepreneur was somebody's child. The reality is failing forward into success doesn't just tie into business. It ties into families. It ties into relationships. And I often will talk from a point of experience. In 2006, 9 years into my business run, I was $600,000 in debt. I was 60 days away from running out of cash. And I walked in and fired my entire company and started over. That's a pretty big nugget to deal with. Boom. The next year we make the Inc. 5,000 for the first of the 6 times we made the list. So if we hadn't made those difficult decisions, we hadn't confronted the brutal reality of that debt load, of the decisions I, as the person in charge, was making, or worse yet, the decisions I was uncomfortable making because I didn't want a conflict. I'd rather have artificial harmony. All those things come into play and how we failed forward into success. People will say, I'd love to have you on my show. Can you talk about how you make the Inc. 5,000 6 times? I said, I'm happy to talk about that as long as we can talk about all the struggles, trials, and tribulations that a company goes through. As a leader, I went through to fail forward into that level of success.
Wow. So let's unravel some of that. So many points I want to address here. What was the business in 2006 you were involved in?
So our company was Diversified Industrial Staffing. We were a Metro Detroit market company at the time. And we basically were placing a lot of temporary employees at automotive plants.
Okay. And then you found yourself in, how did you accumulate $600,000 in debt? What were you doing wrong? What were you doing right?
Well, that could be a whole other show in and of itself. It was, and again, it's interesting that we want to be known from our biggest mistakes, but in this case, my biggest mistakes have now become the way we became successful and the way I'm able to help other entrepreneurs. The reality is, we had a client that we gave long payment terms to, because that in that time, this is pre-recession. That's what recruiting companies did. Essentially, we were acting as the bank for this company. And they went belly up to the tune of $242,000 in debt. So that was that big chunk. We had another company go in debt for $125,000. So, you have 2 big companies go out of business. We were, keeping up with industry standard terms, when the reality is a staffing company, it isn't a bank. It's a human capital provider as well as a fiduciary employer. So I couldn't, when they discharged their bankruptcy to me, I couldn't go back to those employees and say, hey, can I have the money back we paid you because I didn't get paid? Can I go back to the government and take the taxes back that we paid? No. So if you're gonna be a dishonest employer, take that back, a person of questionable ethics, run your payroll through a staffing company and don't pay them if you don't ever think you're going to dig out of your problems. And that's what happened to us.
Wow. What did you learn from that specifically?
2 big things. Margin is king. These were high volume, low margin accounts. So when you take you're running which leaves no room for errors, no room for mistakes, no room for bankruptcies, no room for all those problems. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you actually ask for better terms and you work with employers that meet your core values, then you're going to get better terms. So we came up with a really sophisticated process to take our debt from 120 days to 14 days. So when do you pay your employees? Well, we pay our employees either weekly or biweekly. That's it. I mean, there's no monthly payment terms. Great. We need to be in that same check run because I'm paying all the rest of your employees weekly. Oh, okay. That makes sense. It just like, how stupid were we? But we were just really uninformed of the marketplace. We were very afraid of letting the tail wag the dog, but we were carrying all the responsibility.
I love that you use the word afraid. And as we move through this dialogue, I'm going to extract some more of those things that you were afraid of and how fear played a role. It's the nature of this brand right here, the hidden entrepreneur. I spent decades hiding behind fear, making all kinds of excuses. And, in a similar fashion now, granted, mine wasn't in a heap load of that kind of debt, but it came out in other ways that we can all relate to. So this Inc. 5000, 6 years running, was the staffing company?
Yeah, I still own it today. It's Diversified Industrial Staffing. We switched our model. We do primarily all direct hire now, which is higher margin, lower risk. And it's a good model to work with when we're in the spot we're in right now in the economy, where you've got increased demand and diminished supply of people. So if we can get a great person, we can get them a better job because there's a huge market demand. It's kind of, the average American welder is 60 some years old. And there's just not a next generation of the capacity required in the manufacturing space of their next workforce. So if we find a great person, my Mike Trout of the manufacturing world is the 30-year-old CNC programmer with 10 years experience who can do both mills and lathes. I can't necessarily get him, millions of dollars, but in his world, I can get him a really nice payday because he's a unicorn.
Any of the Inc. lists, Inc. 5000, what have you, those are based on gross revenue for the fiscal year for the company, right?
The way the Inc. 5000 works is it's revenue year-over-year growth over a 3-year period. So so if you take into account that we made it 6 times in a 7-year cycle, that encompasses about a decade worth of experience.
What does someone like you need to bring to the table that allowed you to make that list 6 times?
It really became figuring out where our inflection point was. Where was that pent up demand? So the first year we made it, the country was in a recession. I mean, so you think nobody's hiring. The unemployment rate around the country is 14%. Wow. How did a recruiting and a staffing company do that?
Go ahead.
After terminating the entire company, I really did come up with a methodology to hire for DNA for resume. So I didn't have to unteach bad recruiting habits. I had a person join me. She had been a medical person and she worked at a small doctor's office. And her toughest part of her job is she had to call people up like you and I and say, "Hey, Todd, I just want to let you know we've got your test results, and unfortunately, you've been diagnosed with X. I'm going to leave you on the phone for a minute, and then the doctor's going to join in. We're going to talk about a program of treatment." Imagine getting that phone call, the shock, the awe, the bargaining with death thought process.
Oh my goodness.
So when I interviewed her, I'm like, "Why do you want to work here?" She's like, "I tell people pretty much on a day-to-day basis they have a disease or possibly may die. If I can call somebody and say, 'You've got a new job opportunity,' it's going to change my life." I'm like, "You're hired. If you can do that, you can do this."
Wow.
And so then I hired another guy. He worked at Olive Garden. He was a waiter, and he was able to upsell me. I'm like, if you can upsell me to spend more money out of my pocket, we're going to be able to get. So I just took a different approach because I looked at the transferable skill sets. Both of those people in particular had very strong transferable skill sets. When they came aboard, they were able then to be coachable. It's just like when I work with, when I work with the clients that I work with at Extraordinary, one of my key values and core pieces is, are the entrepreneurs and CEOs that I work with, are you coachable? Now, the coachability for that is a little different versus the coachability of an employee, but still it comes down to simple questions like, when was the last time you read a book? I mean, are you a lifelong learner? When was the last time you watched a documentary or listened to a podcast, and what did you learn from it? It's not the basic blocking and tackling you'd think. We found that these employees, going back to the staffing business, these employees were hungry to learn. They were willing to try new things without fear because they didn't bring 10 years of experience. So we were able to go out, ask different questions in the marketplace. Those questions, getting those answers, helped us figure out where there was a pent-up demand. And that really was in the manufacturing skilled trade space. So employers would say to us, I'm not really hiring. Simple question back was, instead of saying no and bailing off the phone, but that was back in the day when people actually answered the phone, you could have a conversation. And they'd say, well, if you were going to hire somebody, what kind of person would you hire? Well, if you found me this person who could do this skill set, I'd make room for them on my team. I can't find anybody like that. And when the economy does turn around, I want them on my team. Like, oh, okay, well, they're going to cost more. That's fine. So wait a minute, you're telling me there's an increased demand and a diminished supply, and you're going to pay us more? And we figured that out. We put a lot of gasoline on that fire, and literally the $600,000 in debt was gone within 8 years. Paid all in full.
You have a sales background?
I had to do my own sales. Talk about fear. When I was young, I had a fear of the telephone. I had a fear of rejection. I had a fear of being told no. So it was very difficult for me. I could go in and close, but that prospecting was just gut wrenching. It was torturous. Like, no. I'm like, I can't believe people do this for a living. But I was like, at the time I was a single dad. I had my son with me. Like, well, if I don't sell something, he's not going to eat. And now he's 27. He's 6'4", 260. He's a big guy. He likes to eat.
I love all that. You mentioned transferable skill set. I love that angle. Can you place that into the context of an entrepreneur tuning in and listening? What do we need to know? What can we use with that?
Yeah, especially for entrepreneurs who are going to be hiring. I just met a woman. She was the #1 salesperson at a tech company. I was blown away because she had dynamic personality. I said, "How did you find your job?" And she goes, "It's funny, with algorithms and all this other technology, 15 years ago, I never would have gotten my job. I was selling swimsuits in retail, but I was the #1 swimsuit person selling." And I met the owner of the company by a fluke, and we're talking. She's like, her pitch was so simple, but so sophisticated. She goes, "If I can convince women to go to the beach in the bikinis we provide, I can convince people to buy, it was pay-per-click. I can convince people to buy your pay-per-click stuff, no problem." Within a year, she was the #1 salesperson. She doesn't have a degree in technology. She doesn't have a degree in any of those pieces. So she never would have got it. So that guy was so smart. He's like, "You have great people skills. You have tenacity. You have an underdog attitude. We can transfer that. We'll teach you how to sell technology, but we can't necessarily go and teach that DNA that you have to other people." And that's really what we strive for. Certain jobs in your organization are always going to need a degree. Accounting is a perfect example. But if you get an accounting person who is against your company culture and doesn't have your core values, yeah, they might be technically proficient, but they're going to wash out because they're not going to fit with your team. So that's what, for those positions where a degree, accounting, IT, et cetera, is required, find someone who's going to match your values, who you are as an organization, because that's really where the magic takes place. And that's where they become, we call them an and then some employee. Here's my job, and then I'll do some more, and I'll contribute. Those people who fit your core values may not be in sales, they're in accounting or IT, but they're the ones who believe in the values of the company. They're the ones that are going to start your charitable endeavors, your give back programs to the community. That's how they can embody the core values, even if they're not forward facing with the customers.
I've also seen you speak on what I love is the O word, opportunity. And you frame this within the context of luck, intelligence, and trust. Use that to grab opportunity. And I've realized in my current brand here, opportunity, it's just everywhere if you know where to look and how to identify it.
Well, I think that goes back to mindset. I give you credit. You did your research because I gave that speech exactly one time. So I love your due diligence. But it is really true. But I think it goes back to the mindset. And it comes back to, do you have a mindset of abundance or a mindset of scarcity? Going back to when we're talking about fear, I had a mindset of scarcity. I'm like, I got this one client, I better do whatever they want, because if I lose them, then the company's in trouble, my family's in trouble, all these different things as compared to now having a mindset of abundance and recognizing there's opportunity everywhere. If your messaging is clear, if you can talk about how you can add value and how you can help, you're not going to sell anybody anything they don't want to buy. People connect with you on a cellular level. You either connect with them or they don't. And often you connect with them and how you can help them solve a problem. So I think part of the opportunity comes from abundance versus scarcity, but also servant leadership. How can I serve the audience I'm in front of? I've spoken to groups as large as 600. I spoke to a group the other day as small as 10. You don't know who's in the room. You have to bring your A game. When you're doing sales, you have to bring your A game, or when you're a CEO, you're always on stage in a sense. So how can you be a servant leader to other people versus being focused just on what you're not getting?
Wow. So much here. I want to pivot back for a minute and go back to the very beginning and see how you got to be this really knowledgeable, to say it mildly, person. Take
Oh,
us
well,
back
thank
to,
you.
seems like it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think most knowledge, most success, it comes from a point of massive trauma and massive failure in life.
Interesting.
And if you think of, Tom Brady, 6-time Super Bowl quarterback, he was the number 200 pick in the draft. And I only know that because he went to school up here in the University of Michigan down the street. So, he wasn't the number one pick. He didn't have the biggest arm. He had to share time with Brian Greasy at U of M. Boom. Now he's considered the greatest of all time. It didn't just happen overnight. It was through a lot of trials and tribulations and work and evolution. My journey was no different. People, it's funny. People think that, oh, you're successful now, you've always been successful. That's not true. I grew up on a farm. I had 42 kids in my graduating class. I have no problem telling this. I had a high school GPA of 2.5. I always tested well, but I couldn't apply myself. Think ADD entrepreneurs listening. I can't focus on one thing, so I focus on dreaming and visioning. Well, no one was telling us that there was a big difference between being an integrator and a visionary. I was always a visionary. I was awful at the integration part of life some days. And it's crazy to think back that I was raised by a single mom. My father passed away when I was 5 years old. My mom was my primary caregiver. She had to go back to work. Then my brother, who was my older brother, got an athletic scholarship to go play his sport out of state. My older sister got married, moved out of state. Within 60 days, all my core family was gone. Wow. As a 5-year-old, the first thing you feel is abandoned. Second thing you feel is rejected. Fast forward, I'm now doing sales. I hate being told the word no. Wonder why, right? As an older person now, I'm like, okay, it makes a lot more sense. But the reality becomes is what our greatest struggles with as human beings can often be flipped, especially through the vehicle of entrepreneurship, to some of the greatest successes we could ever hope for. I never thought I'd be on a stage in South Africa telling everybody I was $600,000 in debt. I was 60 days away from running out of cash. I walked in and fired my entire company. Then we made the Inc. 5000 6 times. You don't think that in the moment, but if you don't go through those tough times, you don't lean into that uncomfortable, the growth is not going to take place. If you want to get bigger muscles or run faster for athletics, you have to put the time on the track and put the time in the weight room. It just doesn't magically happen. There's only one Bo Jackson and he got hurt. So, the rest of us have to put the time in.
Bo Jackson. What a reference. Bo Jackson.
A little classic throwback for us baseball and football fans.
Baseball and football. Was he doing both at one point?
Yeah,
I mean,
crazy.
simultaneously, right?
Yeah, well, it's like these entrepreneurs who own 4 or 5 companies at the same time. They're the Bo Jackson of entrepreneurship.
That's amazing. Thank you, by the way, for sharing all that incredible with us. So at 5 years old, all of that is now your reality for the next foreseeable future in that time span. How did you cope with that? How did you deal with that? What'd you do?
I didn't know how to deal with it. I threw myself a lot into sports. I wasn't really that talented at it. I mean, and my mom got remarried, tried to connect with that individual. He was unavailable for a lot of different reasons. You'd be surprised if you really get entrepreneurs to talk about, most entrepreneurs that I know that are mega successful come from broken homes, come from fractured families. They're always seeking to fill that emptiness within. And going back to how I select my clients for extraordinary advisors, I want to find out what drives them, because they often say, well, I want to make more money. I'm a capitalist. I have no problem with that. But I want to find out why you want to do it. And oftentimes what they say in public, but what they think about in private are not the same thing. They'll often say, you know what? I never felt good enough as a kid, and I just want to be good enough. I never felt whole or complete. How do I do that? And I'll talk about, my childhood. I'll talk about some of the challenges I faced, and that, there's a lot of different things we can do. But in order to change the organization, the bottleneck is always in the top of the bottle. It's the CEO, it's the executive leadership team, and the people they pick with them. So we have to figure out what drives them and what motivates them, not from a financial standpoint. That if you do a great job and you have a great product or a great service, the finances, I can show you how to make money. What I have to help them figure out how to do is how to get out of their own way, how to get out of their own head, how to stop their stinking thinking so that they're able to free up that, because the brain can't operate in fight or flight and at a higher level of creativity simultaneously. That connection is broken. It doesn't exist. And so, what I've really done is I committed to being a lifelong learner. I still use a coach today. That's what I say to all my clients. I drink my own Kool-Aid. I can't be just, sitting upon top, talking down to the audience saying, you should this, you should that, you should this, you should that. I still have a coach for my business. I have a coach for my baseball. I have a swing coach. I have a coach for my personal relationships. There are 3 coaches that provide me different sets of value so I can be the best me wherever I show up.
Amazing. Talk to me about the stinking thinking. How do you approach mindset with a client? What do we need to know with that?
So the first thing I do is I give them a diagnostic called Color Code. It's free. And your listeners, anybody can go to colorcode.com and take the free assessment. And it tells me which of the 4 colors that they are. They're a yellow, they're a white, they're a red, they're a blue. I'm a blue. It tells me then, based upon that diagnostic, how do they look at the world? There's no right or wrong, by the way. It's just how we're wired. And I think it's simpler than a Colby or a disc. I don't have to remember all the letters and the numbers. Again, being a visionary, it's like, hey, you're one of 4 colors. Super, I can work with that. And then what it does is it gives me scripting on how best to communicate with them in a way they will be heard. So I don't know how many people out there have read the book, The 5 Love Languages.
Oh, yeah.
But if you want to have a successful relationship with your significant other, if you talk to them in their love language, not yours, you get a whole lot further. Same construct with Color Code. If I can talk to an entrepreneur in a way they look at the world, it's able to get them unstuck. Well, many entrepreneurs get stuck. So that's the first thing I do. Then we talk about, and I share that with them. So, I got a client, he's a white. I said, this is why, you're a white. He's like, my gosh, that explains so much. I had no idea. So their level of self-awareness immediately gets heightened. Then we talk about what they want and why they want it. And it's about a 4 to 6 hour conversation about what they want, how they want it, why they're not getting it, what they feel they're inhibiting it. And again, I'm telling you, it's people only think, well, if I just had enough money, it'll fix all my problems. If you had enough money, then what would you do? So there's all these language tracks you go through, but ultimately it comes down to, who were you at 10 years old? What drove you when you asked the question of how did I overcome the challenges? I used humor. I used athletics. I used great listening skills and the ability to listen to absorb, not just listen to respond. So that all these things come into play. Now this is what I do for a living. It's so simple, but so complex at the same time.
You talk about how to grow an 8-figure business. Forget 7. We don't need to deal with 7. Let's go 8 figures, 10 million plus. How to grow an 8-figure business just by listening.
Well, it's crazy. So I have an entrepreneur I'm working with right now. His goal is, I want to get to $1 million in revenue. And I said, well, why? Why? It's like the clients say, they need 5 years of experience. Tell me why. Because in 5 years of experience, you could get somebody who's mediocre. You can get somebody with 2 years experience who's outstanding. Well, what's the difference? It's just a lot of our thoughts were taught to us through best of intentions of maybe where we worked or our parents or whomever. The reality is that a lot of that stuff's just not accurate anymore. I love music. I listen to music not on my 8-track player, but through my iPhone. I can take it to the gym. Taking the 8-track to the gym is not real attractive anymore. So to get someone to go from a 6-figure business or a couple $100,000 in revenue to a $10 million arc, there's a couple of stages we have to figure out. Is one, why? Only 4.3% of all businesses ever reach $1 million in revenue. 90% of businesses ever started fail within 5 years. So let's kind of keep the construct of this. And if you pour too much gasoline on the fire, it will explode and you'll run out of cash. You can actually grow out of business. So I'm more like about controlled slow growth. That's anywhere from, depending upon the industry, 15 to 50% year over year, if we can get it there. But it's not sustainable. We didn't make the Inc. list every single year forever. Nobody does. It just doesn't happen. Again, Tom Brady's won 6 Super Bowls in 19 seasons. There's 13 years he didn't win a Super Bowl.
Let that sink in.
Exactly. And as you think about, why do you want to get there? What's driving you? Do you want to have $1 million in revenue, or do you want to have $1 million in your pocket? Because they're not the same. With one, so we figure that out. We figure what's going to drive you. Then we figure out what are the stages we need to do in the next 30, 60, 90 days to get you on that path. And I've got a client right now. He's about a $5 million company. He wants to be a $25 million company, and he wants to be there within 3 or 4 years. So you do realize the complexities of that are going to probably exceed your current leadership team. So what do you mean? I said, the team that gets you from 1 million to 5 million is going to be different than the team that gets you from 5 to 10. I'll have to walk in the first meeting with a client every time. I say this, like, how many people are on your leadership team? I've got 5. I've got 10. Just plan on the first year, half that team turning over. What do you mean? 3 of these guys are my golf buddies. These are, 2 of them, my cousins here, my wife's here. Just know what you're signing up for. Recognize that if, as you change as the leader, as you change in how you interact with people, and you no longer accept the excuses you accepted 60 days ago, people aren't going to like that. They're going to feel threatened by that. So just know that you want to go from 700,000 to 10 million. The people in the room today, by and large, will be replaced with other leaders. The point of it is like, if you really want 10, I can show you how to get there. Recognize the cost. It's like doing a triathlon. It's a big thing with entrepreneurs right now. Well, recognize there's going to be pain. There's going to be disappointment. There's going to be broken bikes. There's going to be torn muscles. There's going to be, the thought of drowning. I mean, it's not just every young entrepreneur I meet thinks it's Shark Tank. It's not Shark Tank.
Oh, what? Like, here's the check. You're
here's
brilliant.
The check. Yeah. Here's the check. And thank you so much. It's like Mark Cuban giving you this big man hug saying, thank you so much. I'm so glad I met you.
It is a man hug.
It is a man hug. There's no, it just, and then, or you can just get the hearty handshake from Mr. Wonderful. Either one's fine. But the reality is entrepreneurship is, I always ask people, well, how hungry are you prepared to be? Oh, I'll kill for my business. I'm like, no, like literally, how hungry are you willing to be? Let's talk about are you okay with your kids not having Christmas? Are you okay with not going to those cool restaurants? Because every dollar you make, you have to reinvest. And then you have to go to the bank and you have to put a personal guarantee. Have you talked to your wife about that? Well, no, I haven't. Okay. Well, maybe we should start there.
You talk about the person going from 6 figures to 7 or 8 figures, or 5 million to 25 million. Do you find, because I've heard that no matter where you are, it's always that next level is always uncharted. So are the people, whether they're starting at 6 figures or starting at 5 million and want to go up, are there similar fears, concerns, self-doubt, and struggles?
Oh, you know what? If there isn't, then they're probably not a good client for me, because then they're in denial. I can't work with somebody who's in denial. The reality is, and Vern Harnish does a really good job in his book, Scaling Up, outlining the death valley zones of, go to 1 million to 5 million to 10 million. There's all these dips and valleys and dips and valleys. Those dips and valleys are very common in the lexicon of how a business operates. We're cash constricted here, we're cash flush here. We've got this bottleneck, that bottleneck. We've run out of markets to go to. How do we do this? How do we do that? The uniqueness is how the entrepreneur processes that. One of my favorite parts of, and this is a classic book, the Good to Great by Jim Collins, is the Stockdale paradox. So Stockdale's in his POW camp, and he's telling the story about how so many POWs pass away in the camp of a broken heart. Collins says, well, what does that mean? Well, they all come in here with a sense of optimism, because you hear this all the time. Just be positive, just be positive, just be positive. But the reality is they're in a prison camp. And so they'll say, well, I'm going to be, I get here in July, I'm going to be out by Christmas. Christmas comes and Christmas goes. They're still there. Next 4th of July comes, it comes and goes. Halloween comes and goes. And eventually they just start, with the abuse they're taking and all the other things, they eventually just end up, it doesn't work out. Entrepreneurs are no different. If I can sell my way out of anything. No, you can't. No, you can't. They think, well, Amazon lost money for all these years. But if you peel back what Bezos was really doing, it's a much more complicated story. So entrepreneurs have to understand the same thing, because there's that confronting your brutal reality. I have to have faith, like I did in 2006. I have to have faith that somehow I'm going to get out of this debt. I have to have faith that I'm going to become more cash flush. And I have to have faith that I'm going to convince people to come work for me after I just fired everybody. I have to have faith. But my brutal reality is I have $600,000 in debt. I'm almost out of money, and I got rid of all my employees. That's my brutal reality. All right, now let's reset and let's go forward tomorrow. With my clients who are in chaos or panic, every day we do 5 positive things, and they have to text them to me. Here's the 5 things I've done today. Well, I got that from my coach back in 06. 3 days in, what don't I do? I don't text him. Ring, ring, 501. I didn't get your text or your call. Yeah, I didn't do it today. Stop right there. I'm not wasting my time, he said to me. He goes, you're paying me a lot of money. You're paying me money you don't really have. You're going into further debt. Take this seriously, honor your commitments, and either you're in or you're out. Which is it? Wow. All right, I'm in. And you immediately start doing those 5 things. It got to the point sometimes back in 06, the first text message was, I got out of bed and went to the gym. That was a big accomplishment when you're in that bad of shape.
Mm. What was it? The 5 accomplishments for the day?
The 5 positive things you've done today. It could be something simple
Anything.
as, I called 4 clients and I have 2 lunches set up. I got a new PO. I had a really great core value conversation with my young intern. I think I'd like to offer him a job upon graduation. Those are all good things. Yeah. So it's got to come down to, the mixture of the good business strategy, execution, people, cash, plus your core values, plus the mindset of the entrepreneur. Because I just watched this Netflix show about the documentary on that fire festival. If you haven't seen it, FYRE, the guy was constantly optimistic, and he went through $30 million in about 60 days because he couldn't confront his reality. It was a really good lesson for entrepreneurs.
And now, again, talking about people, whether they're at 500,000 or 50 million, does imposter syndrome come into play?
It really does. It's for those of you listening who aren't totally familiar with imposter syndrome, it's essentially, it's what I know and I think the world knows about me in kind of in a real nutshell. And so if I think I'm awful, I assume the rest of the world knows about me. So, my staff at one point in 06 thought I should be the oracle. I should have all the answers to all the questions, all the issues, all the time. I didn't. And I thought I sucked. And I was validating by my behavior that the business wasn't doing well. But I was so embarrassed to go outside of my house and tell anybody how bad things were that I just faked it. I was an imposter. Yeah, everything's great. Everything's super. Everything's awesome. And it's not. It takes a lot of recognition to figure out that, you know what? In order to stop being an imposter, stop thinking I have to have all the answers, the first thing I need to do is I need to ask for help. An entrepreneur alone is an entrepreneur at risk. And right now I'm alone. I need to change that. I need to pivot off of that. And that's why people reach out to coaches like myself. That's why they join groups like EO or YPO. That's why they, if they're for early stage entrepreneurs, they go to SBAM. So there are programs out there or coaches out there that can assist somebody to get to the point where they're not feeling that such a, and with the entrepreneur or imposter syndrome, there's a great deal of shame, a great deal of guilt going back to childhood. I mean, the cycle can really spin out of control inside your head.
I developed this brand based on the foundation of hiding behind fear, and I let that rule my reality, and rule it did. Can you tell us a time that you are well aware of that you were overcome by fear and how you got through that?
Oh, sure. So going back to 2007, restructuring the business, got some momentum going. Still was running out of cash, pretty much like $1 in, $1.50 out the door kind of thing. My bank called me and said, we're gonna call your line. And I said, well, and I showed them the plan. They saw the incoming, and I said, I'm working. I just kind of leave me alone. We did that probably for about a 3 to 6 month cycle. Finally, at the end of it, I was so afraid of having to go and file bankruptcy 90 days ago. I had to make peace. Like, you know what? If we can't work this out, this is over. It's intimidating to walk into your banker and say, you know what? I don't have the money yet. Here's what I have today, but I don't have all of it. So here's what I need you to do. The fear of asking for what I needed, asking for what I wanted. I need you to subordinate that debt and turn off the interest. And I need you to loan me more money. And that's basically what they did. They laughed and they said, well, that's just not going to happen. I said, then here are the keys to the business. You can run it. And I'm going to go down the street to the lawyer and I'm going to file bankruptcy and you're going to get zero. Because whether you realize it or not, we're in bed together. So you can work with me, but get off my back and quit calling me every week And you can, but I need more cash. And here's how, and I came up with an idea how to structure that piece of debt. And I said, this will work if you're patient. But if you want to be aggressive and you want to foreclose on me, so to speak, then here's the keys. And but the stress of you calling me and letting you get in my head when I'm trying to get out of my head isn't working for me anymore.
So
And
you have to confront it lesson there, right? You have to confront it head on.
well, because I hadn't been, I was like, well, it's kind of like, oh, come on, I'll figure this out. We'll figure it out. All right, enough. Okay, we've got to deal with this. And it was like, and I remember sliding on the keys to the office across it, like, take it. I'm done. We don't know how to run the business. Like, I know that. So exactly. I'm just going to shut it down. You can have all the, the 10 desks we have and the outdated computers and the paper files, and it's all yours. Take it. Wow. Or you can go with this plan, or you can come to me with a different plan. But I'll tell you what, I'm gonna follow the law now, and I'm gonna file for bankruptcy, and this is what I'm gonna do. Or we can approach this, because that doesn't feel good to me. So there's got to be a way to solve this problem where you're not beating me up constantly. Because you know what, you're already doing a job that I'm doing a great job of myself. We don't need two of us beating me up. Help me figure this out. Let's do this. And she said to me, she's like, "All right, I think we can get this pushed through, but you gotta make this happen."
Yeah. What conversation would you have with your younger self?
Oh, the biggest thing I'd say to my younger self is trust your gut. So many times during the course of my life, let alone the course of my career, I think I know the right answer. I think this person's toxic. I shouldn't have them in my company, or I should have them in my life or my personal life. Or this is a really bad business idea, but everybody else thinks it's good. So that was the very first thing. So I hired my coach in 2006. And he says, "Well, it can't be as bad as you're telling me." I said, "Yeah, it's as bad as I understand, my limited understanding of financials." He looks at me, he's like, "Oh my God, it's worse than you told me." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "How did you get here?" And I tell him the story. He goes, "Well, what would you have done differently?" I said, "Well, I would have done this, and I would have done this, and I would have done this." "Why didn't you do it?" I said, "Well, I took the counsel of other people, whether it's lawyers who don't always give the best business advice. That's why they're lawyers, not owners. I took advice from my accountant, who, again, between lawyers, accountants, and doctors, they think they know a lot about business, and they can apply certain skills along the way, but they're not owners. They're not entrepreneurs. They don't see the big picture sometimes." And he was like, "If you had just done those three things, you wouldn't be in this spot. I'm telling you, you got to trust your gut more." So that's the first thing I learned, is trust my gut more. Second thing I would tell my younger self is margins over revenue every time. Margins over revenue, and know your financials. I have a degree in communications and marketing. I didn't know them. I know them now. Like, we make decisions. We tell no to customers who don't meet our margin requirements, because it's just crummy business. Why take it on?
Do you believe that everything happens for a reason?
I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I do, by and large. There's certain things that, there's tsunamis and hurricanes and things like that I can't understand. I can't put into the construct of everything happens for a reason. But I can say from not only my personal life, whether going from being a single parent and raising my son by myself, to growing the business, almost running the business on the ground, and then bringing the rebirth to the coaching stuff I do now. There's so many different opportunities that come that I have no idea where, someone may be listening to, they'll call me up and I could help change their lives. Or I could have someone call up and they change my life. That's the great thing about it, is it's a mutual teaching experience. I've been places where I just strike up a conversation with somebody in line at the grocery store, at the restaurant, that, wow, that was really cool. I gave a speech in Toronto, Canada, for a friend of mine. He goes like, "Will you please come and give your speech? I can't pay you. I'll put you up in a hotel and give you gas money." "Sure, Sean, I'll come up and do that for you." Good guy. I want to help him. Very first big event. And I got all these kids in the audience, and I'd never spoken before, like 9, 10, 11-year-old kids. I'm thinking, oh man, all right, I got like on the fly pivot. So I modify the speech a little bit. This 9-year-old kid, his name is Alec, comes up to me, and his mom goes, "He's afraid to talk to you, but I just want to let you know you've changed his life today." I'm like, "How?" And it's my fail forward into success speech. And he showed me this picture he had. He goes, "You said fail 12 times." And he had boxes with 12 F's. He goes, "It equals S, success." He goes, "So now I can't," he goes, "I'm never going to fail, or I'm never not going to be successful, because if I just keep failing, eventually success is going to happen. Thank you so much." His mom gives me a hug. The kid takes a picture with me, and I didn't even see it coming. So do I think that moment, do I think I was put in that young man's life that day for that reason? Absolutely. Did I want to drive 4.5 hours one way? I made a promise, I'm not of my promise, but yeah, it was a long drive, but the drive back home was a lot more exciting than the drive there, because I had a little Alex. I took a picture of the kid and everything. Like, this is awesome. He changed my life. I'm never going to forget him. He may say, hey, I saw some guy somewhere talk about failure, and I just don't believe in it. I don't need pride of authorship. I don't need recognition. The fact that this little kid saw the world differently because he had an interaction with me, that's honestly, that's the reason. That goes to my core value of improving lives.
Are you spiritual or religious in any ways?
I'm becoming more as I get older. I remember I was 6, I had many conversations with God where I didn't think he or she was answering. It's this, the spirituality, I think, is such a one, it's a dicey topic for people. It can be an uncomfortable topic. I guess I just have to believe that I've had so much good fortune happen in my life, both personally and professionally, that I someone's got to be looking out for me, because it's, I'm not that special, cool, or unique where those things should happen to me. I've been to the bottom of the. I met a guy in a baseball stadium watching a game where there's like 5,000 people. We strike up a conversation. 6 months later, I'm at the bottom of South Africa at Cape Horn with a guy I didn't know 6 months ago. I mean, that's just
how it happened.
How did I get there? Yeah, how did I get? I mean, it's just crazy, and it's just so many different things, because I'm basically an introverted extrovert. I can be extroverted when necessary, but I really like my quiet time. So I'm not talking to this, because his name is Brian. I'm not talking to Brian. He's talking my ear off. I'm like, and he's like, hey, I was telling him some of the stuff. He's like, oh, that's really cool. And I want to be an entrepreneur. And hey man, here's my card. He goes, can we be friends on Facebook? Sure, no problem. And just from that opportunity, from him really being much more gregarious and personal than I ever was, somehow I ended up taking a safari. I got to walk with cheetahs. I get, go to the Victoria Fall. I get to do all those cool stuff that 6 months ago was not even on my bucket list. So I really do know that there's something going on in the universe that I can't explain.
Opportunity was there. You found it. You took it.
We'll go with that.
What do you believe happens when it's all over, when our time here on Earth comes to an end?
And I've been thinking a lot about our legacy. And I had certainly a vision at one point in my life of what I thought legacy was going to be. It's shifting over time. I hope that, I hope after my time is here that someone remembers me. I want someone, I hope the impact is there. And I hope that people will, learn from challenges I face, and that they maybe won't spare them the pain. In regards to beyond that, it's tough to say. I guess I'd like to think that we go someplace, but the linear side of my entrepreneurial brain, the finance side, like, well, there's cause and effect. There's 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 - 1 = 0, and the lights go out. So actually, it's so funny in my office, you can't see it, I have a big list of my life objectives. And at the end of the list is, I want to be at peace with dying. That's one of my big goals in life. Because I don't know, like 99% of us don't know. And having lost my father so young, it's like I've he was 45, I just turned 50, and I feel like I'm on borrowed time some days. I've outlived my dad by 5 years. Now, thankfully, my brother's 12 years older than me, and thank goodness, I'm very happy he's still with us. So I hope that there's more time, but the reality is we don't know. So the overall point of, I don't think about what it's like, what's afterlife. I think about, what can I do now? Because if we live in the here and now, we really do live each day as if it's our last. The impact we make on other people, the connections we make with other people, the energy we transfer between others, that's hopefully the legacy.
Yeah, I hear you. Right there with you. I'll leave you with this final question. Todd Palmer, how would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered in general. That'd be great.
Generally.
It'd be nice just to be remembered. It's funny. I've got a lot of friends who are professional athletes, and they get that question kind of with the media, and they give these fluff answers and everything. I think for me, if someone like Alec remembers me when he's my age. That's awesome. He doesn't have to remember my name or anything other than, I used to think life was like this. Now I see life in a little bit better way. Um, it's that legacy play. I don't necessarily need I got friends of mine who want to put their name on buildings. I've written a book, working on my second book. So someone may buy that someday and remember me, but really I think I want people to remember how I made them feel. And hopefully I made them feel cared about, heard through authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability. And that's enough.
Wow. Well, you certainly made me feel extraordinary. There's that word, right?
There you go.
I love it. Extraordinary advisors. Seriously though, thank you, Todd, for coming on, showing up and opening up, and for giving us your thoughts. This has been amazing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on the program. And I'd like to make an offer to your audience. Anybody who's heard me on your show, who goes to my website, fills out the contact information form and says they heard me on your program, I'm happy to give them a half hour free of my time just to talk about whatever's their biggest bottleneck, whatever's holding them back.
Wow.
Because again, it goes back to the core value of improving lives. And but their only requirement is they have to tell me that they heard me on your program today.
Got it.
And I'm happy to put time on my calendar for them.
Wow. Wow. Is that generous and amazing? I feel like I could talk to you forever. So I know a half hour is going to be very welcome. We'll link to that. We'll make it known. Great. Thank you again.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on today. I had a great time.
Cool. And really great to have everybody joining us, whether it's during the live broadcast here or you're listening to the native podcast on either Apple Podcasts, Google, or Spotify. We are there. If you're there, click review. Let me know how you found it, how you like it, what you like about it. I love reading your thoughts. We're going to do this again before too long. Until we do, go get them. All right. We're off the show, still live on Facebook. How do you feel?
I feel energized.
Well, that's good.
How do you feel?
I feel amazing. I feel extraordinary. So true. So cool. Man, you have a lot to offer. Again, like I feel like we could just talk all day. Is that sort of your world?
That's the fun part. I love a rich conversation with layer and texture. It's awkward to be the only person sharing, because I'd love to hear more about your world, how you got where you are, and it's to create that dialogue. So yeah, if you're ever in Detroit, you'll have to sit down and you have to have dinner.
Oh man, great invite. I always do look for excuses to travel. So, I'll take you up on that sometime. Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
I agree. And thank you everybody for all these comments. Really cool. We're going to keep it going. Thank you, Todd. Talk to you guys soon.
Take care.
See you, man.